Hello, you are amazing. We cut out there for a moment. You were just getting on to talking about psychological safety, that feeling of safety when we belong, and my signal left us. The
No worries.
recording going, and now we're back in.
Yeah, so when it comes to the group, that sense of psychological safety, it comes because people are like-minded. People speak the same language in the sense of we communicate in a way that is comprehensible. Um, Maybe just to make this palatable for non-indie listeners, not neurotypicals and neurodivergents, not necessarily, even though they may speak English, they still not speak the same language. As an example, I was out with a friend last weekend on a Saturday, and we went to a restaurant, and we ordered food and we ordered wine, and I had ordered the wine, 2 glasses. Only one arrived. And she was like, okay, you just ordered for yourself? I said, no, I didn't. So I turned around to the waiter and said, can I get a second glass? And normally what people would do is the waiter would go and get the second full glass of wine,
Of
right?
course.
In my case, he just took an empty glass and put it on the table. And then my friend looked at me, we were very close, but she looked at me, she's like, does this happen often to you? And I was like, yes, it's the story of my life every day. And it can be very frustrating sometimes. So it's like just being able, if I spoke to another autistic person, someone with ADHD, I can never have met that person. I will sit down on the couch and we find a common topic that we like. We'll be sitting there for the next 6-7 hours and forget everything around us.
And does
Um,
it tend to be different common topics? Do you have this huge plethora of passions, or do you have a consistent passion bank? Who are your usual suspects?
So I'd say my usual prospect, my big passion is meditation and energy work, anything that relates to it, crystals, etc. So that's something I love to talk about. I
So
love to talk.
you've come to speak as one of my ND gems to a precious gem herself, Emerald Grace.
Um, which I think emerald is even one of my birthstones. Just
Fabulous.
remembering that. I think so, yeah. That's one of my big passions. Then I'm all about philosophical questions, social justice. I'm a debater. If you give me a topic to talk about, I would just talk about it for hours. And I just love learning new things and looking at them from different angles. And I always jokingly say I'm the kind of person. I started out as a dishwasher, and now I work at LinkedIn. So like I've done everything in between, which gives me the ability to connect to a bunch of different people, because oftentimes I've done at least a part, or I have scratched the first surface of some of how their life potentially could be. So I always find a little item, a little topic to talk about, and that can grow.
It sounds like you
Um,
should be doing a podcast, Sylvan. You should be speaking to lots of people and finding that way in to speak to them.
you're gonna love it. It's because I've done a poll recently on LinkedIn, because I'm very new to social media, even though I work for LinkedIn. And that's one of the things that I'm wanting to do, considering doing, is either podcasts or some sort of shorter form of audio video formats in the upcoming month to try out. And I suppose it will be mainly about meditation techniques, or just
Absolutely.
little nuggets of wisdom that I learned from my mentors.
And is the meditation for you, or is the philosophy for you rather, is the philosophy meditative, or is the
Um,
philosophy invigorating?
Philosophy in itself, yes. So it's just talking, reading, and then reflecting about things is something that just fills me with joy. Or learning something new. It doesn't have to be a skill. I can talk to, and that's why I always try to listen as actively to anyone I meet. Doesn't always work, because I have sometimes I'm not in the room.
And does active
Um,
listening look slightly different for an NDer? Are there different things that we can do? Particularly, I'm somebody who might often, I haven't got any by me now, I might often put on a pair of sunglasses so that I can close my eyes and listen into the conversation, because it can be very uncomfortable in groups with people that we're unfamiliar with to close our eyes. We can always look to one side or look to another so that we're at an angle where our eyes are looking a little bit prettier, perhaps. But we don't always want to look pretty. It's not always a priority. Sometimes I just want to be the same as everybody else. So, what does active listening look like to an India?
um, for me, it's I'm quite comfortable with not looking. Like I have days and days. Oftentimes, I'm okay looking people in the eye. But for me, active listening, it's usually I will not look at that person because it will distract me. So I will usually have turned my ear towards that person, and then I'm completely zoned out. So I will be listening to that person only, and I sort of manage to focus my concentration to just what that person says, but everything around me fades. So if somebody bumps into me, I will just jump because I wouldn't notice. And then I have, I feel it's part of echolalia, but it's also because that's how I learned to memorize is reflecting, rephrasing what that person said.
Yes, the
Um,
mirror approach.
and it usually works just fine. And sometimes because my mind snaps and I lose focus and I feel I've missed something very important, I let that person finish it. Listen, I'm really sorry, or interrupt that person. He's like, listen, I just lost my train of thought. Can you just repeat that last 30 seconds from that word on?
And is it
Um,
important to you to get back on track, or are you somebody who can able to just jump straight across the tracks and go somewhere else?
yes. So if I'm talking, I'm the kind of person that has probably 15, 20 different train of thoughts, and that can be very exhausting to most people. So with another India, with another ADHD, I love it. Otherwise, I've learned to focus on maybe two to three. I can't do just one; it's boring. But I tend to focus on two to three. So like whatever my counterpart is able to handle in terms of different topics, and the rest I sort of box. So I always will have different trains of thoughts or different ideas coming up while I talk to someone. It, funny enough, doesn't happen with NDers. It usually only happens with neurotypicals. So with you right now, I'm completely in the zone, for instance.
I'm
And then I
glad
just
to
have a
hear that.
notepad or something to just write it down. Um, so I remember what I was thinking about and just leave it
Absolutely.
there.
I'm making
Not
some
think.
notes now, and I can't lie to you, Sylvan, they are not comprehensive at all, and they are largely much more about doodling than topic keeping.
It is. It's something you just do a doodle, but when you look at the doodle, you remember exactly what you wanted to say. It's funny because I doodle an excessive amount, especially during work meetings. And then
Excessive?
people look at,
Surely there can't
yes,
be too much doodling. When is too much when it comes to the doodle?
if you don't have any more space on the page.
Absolutely. LinkedIn, can we get Sylvan some more paper, please? If you're listening, if you're an executive or you work with Sylvan or you work with any NDA, can we make sure that they've got some more supplies?
We should, although we're trying to be very sustainable, so paper is usually not very desired. Which is usually that's why I use recycled paper because I literally just doodle on it and then
Dip.
on it.
I've got stacks and stacks of envelopes from the post. Anytime somebody sends me some mail or I get a delivery from the postman. I used to work at the post office. Then I keep those I keep those mementos, not because they're exciting to me, not because I'm somebody who struggles to throw things away, but because they will eventually be useful. So do you draw on the iPad at all? Do you draw on your tablet?
I do, although my iPad is more to me more of my more of like second brain really. So I have the Apple Pen. Like I have an iPad Pro with an Apple Pen. So what I often do on my iPad is mind maps or drawing out things that I then do on a PowerPoint after, or sometimes doodling if I don't have sometimes you have those days and moments where you can't have paper on you, but you can have an iPad. So I'll just doodle on my iPad. It has happened before.
And are you somebody who can keep your second brain close to you, or does it tend to wander off?
This one tends to wander off and sometimes ends up in places I can't find it. So see, and this is what happens when you play around with the sphere. Sometimes you drop it,
Yes.
and so it's yeah, it ends up going lost a lot of times, even though it's very big. What I always have handy somewhere is a notepad. I'm very old school, very old fashioned. I always will have an excessive amount of notepads or notebooks and a pen. I never leave the house without one. It's just very rarely.
And when it comes to this stimming, when it comes to shifting that energy, it sounds like for you it's in your hands and
Yeah,
it's in your mind's eye. So you're a visual person who wants to keep their hands busy.
yeah, or walking. So
Walking.
that's where my ADHD comes in. So I'm severely on the hyperactive side. So for me, it's oftentimes there will be a time on the day when I work for long hours sitting where I literally jump off my seat. If I have a hyper focus phase, for instance, I will jump off my seat. I will just
It's
have to take my jacket and just leave the house immediately and
it's
just
really
walk.
interesting, Savan, the way that you describe your being autistic and ADHD as severe. So that scaling of NDness is again another really controversial topic right now. What language can we use? In your LinkedIn profile, you say that you're hyperlexic, so I know that this is something that'll get you going. What kind of language can we
Hyperlex.
use to describe, to scope, describe, scale? What are we trying to do? You mentioned it was a useful experience for you to find out that maybe somebody's had something worse, somebody's had something better. Is there another way
Um,
of describing that?
I use the word severe because in my case it really is quite extreme, and I have found
Extreme.
few people who are as hyper as I am. Um, I'd say extreme, or but I'd say like for me, yes, I guess severely has a negative connotation, but for me, it just yeah, I'd say extreme is probably better. It's just from I guess it's person to person. In my case, it's just from the experience, the people that I met, I have not met anyone quite as well, few people that are quite as extreme as I am in terms of hyperactivity. And other than that, it's really about asking the person. What I would be very careful about, especially from a neurotypical standpoint, is the labels high and low functioning, because
Absolutely.
they're just wrong. It's just labels they shouldn't even be used because they're just wrong. There is no such thing as high or low functioning autism. There's being autistic or having autism, whatever the person prefers. Um, but there's no high low function. We have spiky profiles,
Absolutely.
which makes us excel in some areas and others not so much. And it is just more pronounced compared to neurotypical. But that individual will tell you how how it wants to be addressed. But I've come, especially with the high and low functioning labels, I've come, yeah, more and more. I have a yeah, I'm very controversial. I don't like to use them, especially because I've see firsthand in myself that it just doesn't work that way.
You like
It's
to
like, for instance,
goad. You like to goad to see what changes can be made.
yes, that's also something. It's like I'm very adaptive and I love change, which If you were to think that I'm autistic, I shouldn't like, but then again, that's probably my ADHD talking.
Well, at Activate
Um,
Community CIC, we're not about change, we're about affluence. Affluence. We want NDers to be leveled up financially. Financially. So the reason we want to provide support to NDers is because we are a valuable segment. We're a valuable market, a demographic, an employee unit. So
they are.
let's not make us change. Let's make us millions. Tell me more about the changes you want to see in the world, Sylvan.
So, well, I guess one of them is no war, no more hunger, and no more senseless fighting, which is, I feel, one of the reasons why NDs need to be more present in any part of the society, because diverse individuals oftentimes are the as you would call them, the devil's advocate. They look at plans, they look at yeah, ideas, strategies, and can tell you just by looking at it where pain points could show up and why things should maybe be rethought. And because we like clear instructions, as your podcast is instruction, for instance, you oftentimes would avoid probably miscommunication, which then wouldn't lead to countries fighting against each other,
No
or
poverty,
just
no war.
having
No poverty.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like systemic change needs neurodivergent individuals because it needs that additional neurological, or neurobiological variety in order to, yeah, become a more sustainable and future-proof society.
Absolutely. When we're trying to reduce violence, are we stopping war, stopping violence? What are we stopping? There tends to be two tracks to violence. There's calculated game playing violence, and there's that impulsive, lack of control violence. And NDers are perfectly situated to understand those extremes. Perhaps it's not a polarity. Perhaps there's more of a spiky scope when it does come to understanding violence. And these are the people who can help us out. Is that right, Sylvan?
I think I deem it is. It's like that missing connective tissue to bring things together, bring things in order, and connect dots where they haven't been connected before. So it's really about, yeah, making systemic change and bringing society up to speed. Really, if that makes sense.
Rhythm's important. We've been communicating on a couple of different rhythms. We've had periods of fast passing where the conversation is back and forth. And then we've had periods, particularly when you introduced yourself, where we talk and listen more at length. We've got slightly calmer periods of discussion and just more animated periods of discussion where we want to know what's going on. We want to have a dynamic, exciting conversation. And that is the ND experience, or at least it's looking like that's ours. Do you
It
think that
is.
there are any NDers that would struggle to join in the conversation that we're having now?
Yes, there will. Even for me, there will be days where joining such a conversation would be close to impossible. It's really depending on the sensory sensitivity of a person, and how likely that ND would is in around in social situations. Um, so yes, there will be some for them for who it will be very much at ease. Although I feel that it will be much easier because we both are neurodivergent. But some wouldn't like to. They wouldn't feel comfortable, and that's again something that needs to be respected, because I'm also, as you said, I'm the kind of bubbly person. If I get super excited about a topic, I'm just going to talk very, very fast and just get very loud and very like bubbly. But then at the same time, if I'm being very serious about something, my voice would just go down. So, okay, and that can be scary to some people as well.
Absolutely. People who are
Even to
quite
me.
animated, it can be a lot to take in. And so then, is it easier for you to get animated in your mother tongue?
Nowadays, no. It's because I've spoken most of the language for such a long time. I even dream in them. It's
Wow.
not something I can necessarily control. So if I'm in countries, so I'm in France, for instance, it's something that happens automatically, and otherwise it just happens intermittently, really. So nowadays, most of my dreams are in English, if I ever remember them, which is rare to begin with. But it's also because I've been living and speaking mostly English over the past 3 years, besides with my mom and best friends. And then sometimes intermittently, I stream in Spanish for some reason. Don't ask me why.
It might be because you're a gadget man. I'm not sure. Is there a reference in there? Too much cartoons. Spotlight on passions, go go gadget, cartoons, Pink Panther. These are some of my passions. Tell me a bit more about yours.
My passions is still meditation. It sounds fun. It's like meditation, not in the sense for me doing it so much. It is. But because for me as an ND, it was very difficult to learn how to meditate. Nowadays, I try to share that knowledge with other people, specifically ND. I love the advocacy work, or what it allows me to do, because of me being open. You get the chance to connect to younger NDs that are just starting out to work and ask you for help, so you can share all those little fun, super important tips and tricks that you learned a few years ago from other people that helped me a great bit on how to organize myself and how to get through office politics, for instance. And then traveling, food for as long as I don't have to cook it, and just sometimes being sitting by the ocean, sitting by the sea somewhere,
Getting into
listening to
nature,
and just
sitting with nature, enjoying the world around us. It sounds
yeah.
like you're very active in politics. You care about inclusion. Does the planet come into that? You say no hunger, except for when you've got to cook. No fighting,
Yeah,
except for when you're
like,
debating. What
yeah.
about
So
the
like
planet?
I'd probably say not so much politics rather than social justice. I try to
Social justice.
stay away from politics as much as I can, because well, it's politics after all. It's driving or initiating policy and legislation change from the outside. Yes, I just wouldn't want to be in the middle of all those cogs and being in that machinery, because I feel it would be very limiting.
It's very
At this
difficult to influence when you have got all of this stimulus going on around you that can be harmful and limiting. You can be fenced in, boxed in. Where do you go next? What do you do next? So having
Yes.
a little bit of perspective sounds like meditation really does give you that perspective, and that you then have that hyperactivity, that extreme level of energy that allows you to act on your ambitions. Or does the old ADHD start button get in the way?
It does sometimes. It used to be a lot around, in around procrastination. That's something I kind of managed to solve over the years. One of the best book I've ever read around procrastination. It's called Procrastination. It's quite an old book. It's yellow cover with like a little alarm on it. So whoever has issues with procrastination, that's the book to read. And then being scatterbrained sometimes, having too many things in like too many projects, and then just jumping from one to the other, and sometimes getting lost and not realizing that I should have finished the laundry first before
Yeah.
I started writing an email. So those kind of moments as well, yeah. And then sometimes being very chaotic and just not finding the stuff that I need.
Well, this has been a scatterbrained, bouncy, chaotic interview where I think we've also stumbled on quite a few shared truths, some novel truths, and the true you. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, Sylvan. Is there anything else that you want to say?
Besides that, it was also a great pleasure for me to have you as my podcast host. And yeah, I'd say nothing about us without us, and for that, it just takes a lot of courage, time, and taking it step by step. And we are all in it together. So um, I feel that there has been quite some shifts in within the indie movement itself, and I feel there needs to be a lot more unity right now, and we can sort our own differences out later. But right now, it's about bringing the indie movement into the mainstream.
Well, Savan, it sounds like you're absolutely on the front line of the ND movement, that you're taking us step by step towards the change that you want to see, that you believe we want to see, because you value and believe in nothing about us without us courageously. Over time, I believe that we'll achieve your goals. I believe we'll achieve our goals. I've been Emerald Grace. Check out Activate Community CIC, and I'll see you soon. So that's the end of the podcast, Sylvan. I will usually stop it recording before then, but I'm still getting to grips with it. So we are still recording now. We've got this. I'll do the news. We're on the news, and I'm shuffling my papers. Shuffling my papers on the news with my books out of the way. Sylvan, I am going to stop the recording. I don't know how. It's like a WhatsApp message. When do you release the thumb? Should we do a countdown? How do you want me to press the stop button? Do I do a countdown? Do I do a
Um,
landing? How am I going to press it
let's
so
do
I
a
can
landing. I haven't had a landing in a while. I like the
do a
landing idea.
landing? Get ready to clap for your pilot, Sylvan.